In my last video, I did a review of Throne and Liberty and oh boy. Now I'm obviously a teeny tiny little YouTube channel, so any statistics I have should be treated as relative to my size, but it seems as though I irritated some of the player base. It is my lowest like to dislike ratio ever. I am unsure how many of these dislikes are owing to just not liking the fact that I didn't like their favourite game, or something else. If you watch the video, I put out a disclaimer about my feelings right at the beginning, and I am honest with what parts of the game I interacted with. I said at several points that I could see a decent game there, but it wasn't for me. I also provided how many hours I spent playing the game. And that last piece of information seems to be a sticking point, as evidenced by many messages in my comment section. Apparently, 20 hours is not long enough. Aside from that, there were a few salty dickheads who just wanted to beef, and some people who just took the piss out of my accent. But this experience made me think about the question of how long should you play an MMO before you can judge it. Now, I already sort of know the answer, and that is based on the fact that it is subjective, so it is pretty hard for any one opinion to be correct or incorrect, as it is relative to the player and their experience. But I did some Googling and cogitating around the topic, and I think there are several points to consider, some viewpoints to try and understand, and then ultimately to make my case for how I come to my opinion and why I think it is valid even after 5, 10, 20 or even 100 hours. So stick around to hear everything I have to say, even though I know that some of you pedants are gonna disagree with me anyway. So I think that a lot of people saying that 20 hours is not enough is probably coming at things from the point of view that MMORPGs, or MMOs in general, are about the end game. End game usually takes a while to get to and gear up for, and is part of the game that you can play in perpetuity once the base game is completed. Now, with this being the focus, then yes, totally, 20 hours is not enough, as you are likely not going to get anywhere near that. But you see what the problem is there. The problem is assuming that you think that everyone else is only interested in the end game, when the reality is that many people are not. I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a stat somewhere about like the percentage of MMO accounts that never get anywhere near endgame, and it was remarkably high. So the mistake there is taking your experience and then judging everyone else by your standard, and that ain't a good method to use in life in general, let alone video games. We should always be mindful of that way of narrow thinking. I have a bit of a theory as to why some people think like that in relation to MMORPGs, and it goes as follows. I would suggest that a lot of these people, and let me just put out a disclaimer right now that I am not saying that you are wrong or your viewpoint is invalid. Again, remember the word subjective. I would suggest that a lot of these people may well be experienced MMO players, and so long ago they experienced all stages of an MMO, probably their first one, and then they began playing the endgame content, and once you have been there, it's kind of hard to go back, even if you start a new MMO, because even if it is new, you kind of know where this is all going to end up, and if you really enjoyed your time raiding in guilds or whatever, then that is the part that you enjoy. So when you go to a new MMO, you can't help but see the early game as something that needs to be gotten through to get to what you think is the good stuff. They are the vegetables you have to eat before you get to the meat. If you're vegetarian, just swap out the meat for corn nuggets or something. On a side note, corn nuggets, pretty fucking good. You should all try them. Just proves that it doesn't matter whether it's chicken or mycoprotein, ground down into paste and covered in batter, it all tastes good when you dip it in ketchup. Anyway, another sentiment that came up a few times in support of the endgame argument was that the leveling process is just the equivalent of a long tutorial and the real game starts at endgame. Now, I want you to kind of sit back and just have a think about how ludicrous that sentiment is. What the fuck are you saying? The whole last game doesn't matter, it's just the bit you do at the end that really matters? No, not for me, and not for a great many others either. If the whole point of the game is just to play the bit at the end, then just make the game that and get rid of the stuff before it. But of course, that isn't the point. These games are made to try and appeal to the widest set of players. Players like me who just love moving about the environment, exploring and leveling alts. People who like PvP. People who like the endgame. These games are many things to many people, and none of them are wrong for how they play it. The end gamers might just be the most vocal section of MMO players, but I know for a fact that there is an army of solo casuals out there who are also contributing to the virtual worlds they inhabit, making your games feel alive and lived in. I hear some people almost lament that the leveling process is too quick these days and not like it used to be in, say, Vanilla WoW, where it took a long time to get to top level and you played through the game to enjoy that process. Now I know someone is just waiting to blow hard about how actually you can get it done in X hours, but I don't give a fuck. We're just using the example of someone playing the game at a reasonable and relaxed pace, not going fucking berserk to reach level 60. I think part of the blame of why leveling now in something like WoW Retail is much quicker is that the developers sped it up as a result of seeing players just going fucking gangbusters to get to top level and start raiding. But that ain't me, Jack. Oh, corn pop! And it ain't a lot of players too. Freed from the shackles of endgame, we are here to enjoy the actual game. So it goes without saying that when I am playing a game to judge it for my own personal enjoyment, as well as write a review, I am looking at different aspects to those people that I mentioned previously. And I will just reiterate that neither group is wrong. You like what you like. It reminds me of when you recommend a series to a friend from Netflix or something and you kinda add the qualifier, it gets good after one season, or you need to get through the first few episodes before it gets going. Yeah, sure, that is often the case, but when you recommend it, ask yourself why you add those qualifiers. Partly because it is true, it does get good after the first season, but also because you kind of know that it is a bit unreasonable to ask someone to spend so much of their precious time on something you are suggesting. Now imagine saying to someone that they should spend 100 to 150 hours on something before it gets good. It's kind of crazy, even if it does actually get good after that time. When you think about it, all we really have is time, and it is precious. So I did some Googling and found some Reddit and forum posts, and obviously this is a topic of debate pretty much since MMOs became a thing. There were even some references to Ed Zitron's MMO reviews from way back. Now, Ed does takedowns of the tech industry, and I urge you to listen to his podcast Better Offline and check out some of his other media. He also makes a good follow on Blue Sky and gives good skeets, as the kids might say. Whilst there were plenty of people saying similar things about not giving it enough time, there was also plenty of people who all agreed that you can make a decision on whether you like a game after as little as 30 minutes. Even games as vast as MMOs. And I pretty much subscribe to this. I think I saw Handsome Waistcoat Man once say that he doesn't buy into the whole it gets good after 100 hours thing, and that the game should be good from the start. And I agree with Waistcoat Cavill. Why in the ever-loving fuck should I play a game I don't enjoy for hours and hours just to get to a certain bit with the promise that it will then get good? If I don't enjoy, say, the combat after 10 hours, is there going to be a completely different combat system after 50 or 100 hours? The activity might change, but the gameplay is, and should, be the same. Should, because if you change to a completely different gameplay system, then what was the fucking point in the first bit? Whatever anyone says, those game developers didn't put all that effort into making the main bulk of the game just for it to not be important, even if they do start making it a bit quicker as time passes. Now, if you have watched more than one of my videos, you may well know that I am not a fan of capitalism. Not one little bit. And I tend to think that it ruins everything in life, and the same goes for video games. Again, this is my opinion. You don't have to agree. You can love capitalism and want to do a big fuck on it and marry it, but I just think that the underlying need and drive for profit often ruins everything. One thing that capitalism is good for when it is the prevailing system we live under is using it to predict and understand things designed to work within it. Its goals are simple. It wants to make money, all the money. And in consumer products, and especially something like games, and perhaps even more so in expensive to make games like MMOs, it wants to appeal to the widest range of consumers possible. At the moment, the latest thing is to cry about games being woke when, quite simply, there is no powerful gay cabal taking over your games. It is just marketing people who have polled and tested ideas and put them in games because they want to sell as many of them as possible. With MMOs, you're building a game that aims to provide as many different activities to many different gamers. The collectors, the completionists, the PvPers and the raiders, the role players. Endgame could rightly be seen as the pinnacle of these, which is why we get race to world first around raids and not who collected a particular mount. But the game is there for many different people, just like real life. So the main game, plus all its side activities, can be judged on their merits, not just the end game part of it. There can also be something to be said about free-to-play games kind of engendering a more lax approach to things. You can pick it up without any cost and just discard it as easily. Whereas back in my day, you perhaps only got one game and you played it until you finished it because you weren't going to get another one. In the case of MMORPGs, the early ones had things like a monthly subscription fee. So you were committed to that game and to playing it. And with the advent of like digital media as well, games are just easier to obtain. They're on sale, you collect more of them. I know my Steam account is just littered with games that I have not played because they were reduced to stupid prices and I bought them all up. And so it is a more frivolous time to be a consumer. You can pick up and set aside things without having to commit. So we may be looking back on a time in games when things were a bit different and people often committed to the games that they made a decision to buy. Anyway, just to go back to my comment section again, someone told me that my not liking the game was a skill issue. I mean, I've enjoyed plenty of things that I am shit at, and within reason you could make the case I am actually shit at most MMOs I play. So skill or lack of it plays no part in this. So have that on toast.
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
I mentioned that to sort of bring us back round full circle to the beginning and my review of Throne and Liberty and whether or not my critique is valid after 20 hours of gameplay. So, is it valid? Yes. Yes, it is. But I think it is valid only because I provide certain context. That being, number one, what am I looking to get out of the game? If my review is for endgame, then I have to play endgame. If I want to just play the game and review that, then that is the focus of my review. Number two, it is my opinion and you can disagree with my opinion, but it doesn't make it wrong. You can even use my opinion that you disagree with to inform your opinion. If you know what I, as a reviewer, am interested in and focusing on, then that might help you know whether a game is for you or not. And number three, regardless of how much time I spent with the game, if I declare how much I played it for, you have that context, which again helps inform your opinion, knowing that this person's opinion is based on 20 hours of gameplay. You can go and watch someone else's video that played it for 40 hours and someone else who played it for 100 or 200 hours and get different viewpoints on each. And I mean, I will just push back a little here and say that 20 hours is not an insignificant amount of time by any stretch. But again, as long as context is provided for what I did in the game, etc., it is a valid critique. And why did I stop playing it? Because I didn't like it, which in itself is a useful bit of context. The game to me was boring, so I stopped. Now, I'm a bit of a sucker for punishment, so it may well be that down the line I get a bit bored and have anything better to do and I load it up again and go back for more. But that's a side issue about my fucked brain. Anyway, I understand why people will say games like this need more time to review, but as I said, those points are filtered through someone's personal experience and preference. So whilst I am right, I am also wrong in your experience, but so are you, but you're also right. So I guess everyone is wrong, but also everyone is right, so fuck it, who knows? My personal opinion is you can play a game, any game, until you don't want to anymore, and your critique is valid based on your experience of the game. But that is just my opinion. And my opinion on MMOs is that the whole game should be good, not just the end game. So what's your opinion? Let me know down below. I'm off to be a big old casual Andy and run around jumping up and down like a noob.